Hey y'all, Fred here. Thanks so much for joining me today. We're going to do some power cut tests. And by power cut tests, I mean we're going to power through it quickly. That's all that really means. This is the Spyderco Native 5 carbon fiber. This is a replica that I got off of OK Knives. If y'all have watched my videos, and by the way, I will put a link to the recent review I did on this knife up there in the corner. You're welcome to go back and watch it. I'm going to go through this pretty quick. This has become one of my top favorite go-to knives. I put this in my pocket as much, really more right now than any of my Rosies, and I got 4 different Rosies and I love them all. That's how comfortable and just nice this knife is. However, that being said, you need to go watch that review video if you're thinking about getting one, because it did have some issues and I did have to do a good bit of work on this thing, including some grinding with a diamond Dremel bit to get this lock to fit in nicely and to smooth out that action a little bit. However, after doing all that, I have gotten this thing dialed in to where I love it. This is actually one of the most fidgety knives I have, and I talk about that in the video. A knife doesn't have to be drop shut, action to be fidgety. Fidgety just means it gives your hands something to do while you're doing something else, and this is just as fidgety ambidextrously. That's a new word for today, lefty or righty. And I can sit and do this all day long and annoy the hell out of people, right? So to me, this is a very fidgety knife, but it's the perfect size, shape, weight. It feels excellent in the hand. I'm going to bring up the specs real quick. We're going to cover just a few of them here. This does match up with the original full open length, just a hair under 7 inches, about 6 7/8. That looks like to me. The blade is about 2.8 total length with 2.5 inch cutting length. The handle is 4 inches closed. This does have a thicker, beefier 150 thousandths blade stock. However, you can see it tapers down very nicely. That distal taper towards the tip gives you a nice thin pokey tip, but a very strong blade. That's another one of the reasons I love carrying it, is because I don't have to worry about breaking the tip off like I would with, say, a Rosie that has a very thin blade tip. That just all the right combination down there, right? Love the handle. The contoured carbon fiber is it just feels so good in the hand. It's a hard thing to explain. It's one of those you just have to feel, right? This is a VG10 steel according to OK Knives, and I have no reason to particularly doubt that. The real one comes in an S90V if you get the fluted carbon fiber scales for the real version. 3.3 ounces makes this thing nice, lightweight, easy to carry. I like the backlock now. It's something I didn't think I would like as much as I do, and I love it. I paid just under 35 bucks for it. Behind the edge is not too slicey, 20 thousandths, but again, you're dealing with a 150 thousandths blade. I did reprofile the edge on this knife, and that's kind of the big story here. Knocked it down to an 18-degree near mirror finish on the WorkSharp Pro, so that's really what I'm looking forward to testing. This one I got a little skin in the game because, again, this is probably my favorite carry knife out of the bunch right now, so I'm really interested to see how this VG10 steel is going to hold up with that new profiled edge. Every time I sharpen a knife, it does really well in the test. I'm really hoping for big things here, that I won't end up disappointed by the end of this. That's all I'm going to say. Well, no, it's not all I'm going to say. I promised to do very quick size comparisons. We're only doing one set of knives here. PM2 and the Para 3. Pretty much everybody knows what those sizes are. You can see this is actually just a hair shorter than the Para 3. Roughly about the same cutting length, maybe 1/8 of an inch shorter. No big deal there. All right, that's all you get for this part. Let's get over to the table and get to cutting.
All right, before we get started with the actual cutting, I didn't show the sharpness of the blade, that it really is a 10 out of 10. I did resharpen it, as I mentioned, so just showing you that, yep, nice, crisp, clean cuts through paper. You may want to remember that because we won't see a whole lot of that again till the end of this video. So I'm trying to speed up the cutting here. I will say this knife is still an absolute favorite. It's probably the knife I carry more than anything else. The ergonomics are great. I love the size. It does have only basically 2.5 inch cutting edge on it, so that makes a little bit of a difference. But for 9 times out of 10 for what I need out of a knife, I just don't need anything more than that. Going through the cardboard, great, no snags, no hang-ups. 150 thousandths is kind of a medium on the thickness, but it tapers down, to a fine edge at the front. So you can feel it a little bit as in the terms of the thickness, but only if you're like comparing it to all these other super thin, Rosie-like blades that you deal with. So let's see how that cardboard, 390 square inches. Oh, first, before I can do that, I try to get the tape off of these stupid boxes before I do these tests, but sometimes I don't do a very good job of that. So using this 𝗏𝗏𝗃𝗃𝗃 cleaner to clean that gunk off. Really good at getting the residue off. If y'all have never tried that, that's why I showed it there. So looking pretty good here so far. You're going to see I have a weird day here in testing this knife. Part of it is that it's just a 2.5-inch blade, so it comes out of those cuts really easy. So you're going to see me just cut a whole bunch of paper trying to figure out, is it me, is it the blade? But no, we're still in pretty good shape here, so I'm going to give that a 9. Trying to do more of these draw cut tests. This has a nice low center line tip on it. Another reason I really like this knife. And so just showing you that it's real easy to get this knife down on the table to do those kind of draw cuts. You don't have to raise up very high. Now I made a mistake. I should be cutting the hose first, but I'm screwed up and just cutting the rope first. It's not a huge deal, except you're going to see that, you know, it just gets progressively more dull. Right now I'm just looking for a good pop through the rope. Will it cut down without having to do a lot of sawing? And you can see this thing is popping right through this rope. Really nice. So it's starting to get a little more dull here at the end. Some of that is technique. But overall, it did pretty good. I'm going to give it a good score in terms of its ability to cut through that rope. But now we got to see if it damaged the edge. So that sisal rope's pretty hard on an edge. If you're going to dull a knife, that sisal rope is probably going to do it. You can see I'm kind of bouncing through this. Can I cut through all the way fast? But then I end up pulling out of the cut because of the shorter blade. So just really doing lots of test cuts. It still feels pretty good at this point, but I'm feeling like there's something on this blade and I just can't quite get my fingers on it. So I'm just trying to really figure this out. So my apologies. I hate, that y'all have to watch some dumbass cutting paper all the time. I actually downgraded that to an 8 because I feel like it was a little more dull than a 9. So just, it is what it is. Now I'm going to go back and cut my hose. Again, I'm looking for the ability to cut through, but the width of the cutting edge, that 2.5-inch cutting length, is just about the size of a smushed reinforced rubber hose, right? So it's almost impossible to get right through it. Plus I'm feeling as you get towards the heel of that blade where it's 150 thousandths thick, you begin to feel the thickness as you're trying to push through something thick like rubber. Overall, no issues in terms of cutting. If you had to cut a few rubber hoses in your day, this knife would do it just fine. You wouldn't see any problems from that. Now, though, we're beginning to see a few snags start to creep in here, and this is what I thought I was seeing after the rope. And, it's so hard. Can I cut past it fast? If so, that gives it a little bit higher of a score. And if I can't at all, if there's just snags that stop the blade dead right in the middle, kind of like what I'm seeing there, now I know I got to rank it a little bit lower on the scale. So I don't know if it's the knife, if it's just me having a weird day. Maybe this is a bad piece of paper or pack of paper because I'm going through several sheets trying to figure this out. And that's just me being frustrated. I'm like, I don't even know what to rank this thing. So I'm going to give it a 7. You could call it a 6 if you want. If you think I'm being too generous, feel free to give it a 6 in your own book. So now I'm using the choked forward on this. Again, I'm choked up into that forward finger choil. It's getting good bite into the wood. This is more of an ergonomic test than anything else. So now I'm choking back. So instead of having my finger up on that forward choil, I'm gripping the back end of the handle and thumb forward, still saber grip. And what I discovered is this is really the best grip right there for really getting good bite into it. This is that aftermarket clip. I'm feeling it a little bit, but it's not bad at all. I'm trying to just remind me and you that that's not bad at all. You can do a hammer grip, no problem. The ergonomics on this thing are really good. So let's see. Usually it's a funny thing. The wood doesn't often do much more damage to the blade, but I'm already feeling right here that it's clearly not as sharp as where we started. That's pretty obvious already. So there's a kind of a fast cut through the paper, and now you're just going to watch me hacking up paper again for the next 30 seconds or so, trying to figure out how good or bad is the edge of this blade. Now I'm just being stupid. I should just flip the paper over and cut a nice clean piece of it, but no, I'm going to make all of our lives more difficult and make it harder to figure out where this thing is at. So it's clearly starting to tear paper right now. So I think, I can see where I ended up. I have my notes on it. This thing is no better than a 5 at this point. It still cut stuff. It cut everything just fine. All right, so let's strop it back, see how easy it is to strop back. So I've got a 16 micron on this brown side. and I'll give it, I do about 4 strokes per side, then I alternate for about 10 strokes per side, then I'll flip it over. This is a 6 micron on the green. I think I did like 11 or 12 strokes per side, all told, about 21, 22 strokes per side between those two. So let's see, did that do its job? And yeah, this thing stropped back great. So it worked like a champ. All is good there. This is now back to a 10. So that's a good thing. It'll strop right back. So let's dive into the stats and get this thing wrapped up here. All right, so here we go in the stats. If you haven't seen this before, first, apologies. I know this is impossible to watch or read on a phone. On the far right side in blue is the knife that I'm testing today, as well as the last 10 or 11 knives that we've tested in this series. This was the Spyderco Native 5 carbon fiber replica. This is supposed to be a VG10 steel. I don't have any real reason to doubt that. There was no mention of what the HRC hardness on this knife was, this replica. If it was a real good VG10, it should be about a 4.5 on the edge retention score as far as knife steel nerds goes. I did resharpen it to 18 degrees. That has always improved the performance of the knives in all my tests so far. I did start out as at 10 out of 10. I cut about 391 square inches of cardboard, and it only knocked it down to about a 9 after that. So I was really happy with that. This is, again, one of my personal favorite knives. Then the arrow, the little red arrow, that means just that I did the tests out of order. I usually cut the hose first, but in this case I cut the rope first, just not thinking about it. So did my normal 11 rope cuts. I'm supposed to do 10, but when I'm liking it and it feels good, I'll always do one more just for fun. I don't know why. Great pop through the rope. I didn't have to saw anything. The blade, that little bit of belly on it, enabled me to just really, slice cleanly right down through that sisal rope. That's a really good thing. So I did 11 of those cuts. It only knocked it down. I think, I gave it an 8.5. After that, on the sharpness scale, I could tell something was going on, but there wasn't any clear snags hanging it up. So then I did my 3 hose cuts, and that knocked it down to a 7. There were definitely some snags there after that were hanging up in the paper. Then we went on and did the wood cuts, and by the time I finished on that wood, and I didn't really even cut that much of the wood, it's not like I went to town on it or anything. By that point, it had already started dulling a lot. It was just kind of getting worse and worse after each test, so it ended up as a 5 after the wood. I did about 21 strokes per side on the stropping, got it back to a 10 out of a 10, so yeehaw for that. Overall, I'm going to say that I am really very disappointed in the edge retention of this knife. I had hoped for a much better showing than this, just in terms of the edge retention. I don't have any reason to doubt that this is not a VG10 steel. However, you can pretty clearly say, at least from this example of one, that the heat treat on this is not clearly up to par. It should have done better than that with a good heat treat. So, but listen, y'all, it is what it is. This is a replica knife that I paid $40 for, and it's got carbon fiber scales that are beautifully done, in my opinion. So a $40 knife, how much edge retention do you really expect out of that? Really? So, I'll come back and mention that again in a minute. Let's talk about how it did on the test. I was hoping for better. Probably not a good heat treat. Hard to tell how bad the nicks were. If you saw how many times I had to cut that paper, it was just giving me weird feedback, just really strange feedback. But clearly I could tell it was hanging up and it wasn't cutting clean, because you saw at both the beginning and then the end after stropping it, it just slices like a hot knife through butter through that paper once it's stropped up really well. So it definitely was putting a damage on the edge of that knife. There's no two ways about that, right? Did a great job on the hose, cut straight through that. Great job on the rope, as I mentioned. Ergonomics were phenomenal, as I expected and already knew. I mean, this is the knife that I carry probably more than anything else for the ergonomics. It's hard to explain until you hold this knife in your hand how contoured these scales are and how perfectly that just fits in my hand, at least. Different size hands are going to love it or hate it. I get that, right? I'm just telling you my experience. But the hose hosed it. By the time I was done with the hose, it was dull all over. The wood finished it off. Again, still excellent ergonomics. I discovered that choking back, not having my finger in that forward choil when you're doing some hard cutting. If you choke back on the knife, there's just enough, and I have a size large glove, just enough space in the full handle there that you can hold that in a saber grip and really get a lot of good power. It bit into the wood really well, so you know, if you have to do some of that type of cutting, no problem at all. It was very easy to strop back. So you can see I've done this for the last bunch of tests here. I've given it 2 different scores, one for edge retention. As far as edge retention goes, I'm giving it a 4 out of 10. Just not great, right? I'm disappointed in it. But as far as an EDC knife goes, it's still a 9. That's me. That's totally subjective. It's how it feels in my hand. It's a nice lightweight knife. I love the fact that there's no hump on the back of it where I can get my thumb out over the hole in the blade, whereas like say with the Para 3, you can't do that. You know, that would be the equivalent size. Even with the Sage 5, which I do love, the hump isn't quite as pronounced as it is on the Para 3, but with this knife there's no hump at all, and that blade angle is great. It's got a low center line so you can do easy draw cuts, pinch cuts. It's just for me the perfect size, shape, weight, and everything for EDC. You know, would I love to have the real version of this? Absolutely. That would be, I think, an absolute home run for me. To get it in the real Spyderco version with one of the real good quality steels, to me, that would be like maybe my one and done kind of EDC knives. Although I think there's no such thing for us, at least. So anyhow, there you go. Hope that's helpful to you. I'm just going to leave it at that. You get to see what it is. I gave it a pretty low score, edge retention score of 4, but I still love this knife. I'm still carrying it. I've still carried it since these tests, and I can see me just continuing to carry it. When you buy a $40 knife, you got to expect you're going to be stropping it back a little bit more. This strop back great, strop back straight up to a 10. It is shaving sharp once again, and easily handles all my daily tasks. So I can't ask for more than that out of a knife. Otherwise, if y'all haven't subscribed yet, would love to have you join our little band of renegades here. Throw me a thumbs up if you're still watching, because man, that really helps me with the algorithms. I got to start saying that at the beginning of the videos. And do that for your other favorite creators too. You know, I'm just as guilty as anybody. I watch everybody else's videos, and I find myself clicking away to the next video before I've given that guy a thumbs up. So that's the easiest thing you can do to really help us out. It doesn't cost you anything, or you know, it's 1 second of your time to hit that thumbs up. So really appreciate it if you do that. Otherwise, hit me up in the comments. Let me know what you think. We'll talk to you guys soon. Take care.